time, Paul. That's probably the best one I've ever seen.
Oh,
That's nice.
lovely. Thank you so much.
So you have to start when you're a baby to get that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of a pity thing because I've been around so long.
Well, first of all, let me just say it's an absolute delight to talk to you and to have you come here with us and to be a part of these beautiful events that are the Writers Institute events. And we're just so pleased, and it's wonderful to have a great crowd and a crappy evening come out. And,
Yes, seriously, the fact that there are this many people here in this weather speaks volumes. So.
About you?
No.
Yeah, you.
Them.
I come out, nobody. Chew gum. So it's a delight. What is? I want to talk about the book. I want to talk about what you've been up to. There's certainly a COVID theme in the book, but I just I find your story fascinating because, as I say, a baby, but you come into this adopted family, right? Mm-hmm. And you really have show business in the family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Way back.
Now, is this true, or am I making this up? Your mother's father created the honeymoon.
That's true.
That's cool, right?
It's so cool. I mean, I could do an hour of stories of Papa Harry, my grandfather, and he was a legend, and especially a legend among comics in the business. And he created the Honeymooners because he was writing the Jackie Gleason show, and those characters started as sketches on the Jackie Gleason show. And that's, it's kind of also based on he and my grandmother. My grandmother talked like this. She's from Brooklyn. And so that was, their accents they sounded just like my grandmother. The women sounded like my grandmother, especially. My grandfather also wrote for Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, and then after they split up, he wrote all of the Dean Martin roasts. He wrote for Milton Berle, Jan Murray.
So Dean Martin got custody of him.
Basically, yes, exactly. He punched up, he put in humor in JFK's speeches. Yeah, he wrote for Sinatra. He and Sinatra took a plane to Cuba to take $1 million in a suitcase to Luciano when he was exiled there. Lucky Luciano. I'm telling you, my grandfather is a whole story in and of himself. And the rest of the family are equally as interesting.
So as you're growing up, how aware are you of that and affected or not affected by it?
Unaware, because on my grandfather's birthday was always at our house, and all of his friends would come, and the same generally on Thanksgiving and Christmas. All of Papa Harry's friends were would come, and to me they were just Uncle Milty, Uncle Dean, Uncle Danny, Uncle Sid, Auntie Phyllis. I didn't know who they were, and there was one time I was watching television. I must have been about 12 or 13. And there was a commercial for like the whole thing of Dean Martin compilation, and I went to my mom and I said, "Did you know that Uncle Dean is famous?" And she said, "Uh-huh. You didn't know that?" No, to me, he was the man with the big dish of candy in his dressing room. And I used to love to go visit my grandfather because we weren't allowed to have sugar except when we went to visit Papa Harry. We went to Uncle Dean's dressing room because he wanted to give us candy all the time, and my mother was afraid to say no. So she let us eat candy. So I loved going to Uncle Dean.
How old were you when you had your first dressing room?
2. I did my first commercial when I was 2. So I'm assuming I had a dressing room then. I don't know. I mean, I was small enough to probably change in the back of a station wagon.
And consciously, you become conscious of what you're doing, that this is something that is an entertainment to people, comes about when in your life?
Probably Little House time. Before that, I did a bunch of commercials.
Yeah.
But for me, commercials were an I don't have to go to school for a day treat. And oftentimes we would get to bring home cases of whatever product we were hawking. I got a bicycle once, I got a box of candy bars once, I came home with a case of mustard. Shaving cream, yeah. Crest, I was a daddy. I only have one cavity, one of those kids. So that was fun, but it didn't feel impactful until Little House, and I still was so, I was only 9, so I was still sort of blithely and blissfully unaware of fame. I just knew that people were starting to ask me to sign pieces of paper to write my name. I've asked for one autograph in my life, and I was much younger than 9 when I did it. I asked for Prince Charming's autograph at Disney on Ice. I couldn't for the life of me understand why people wanted me to sign my name on a piece of paper, because A, I was not a Disney person. I couldn't skate, definitely not Prince Charming or a princess, but I did, and I was so excited to do it. I would sign, it took forever. I'd scroll the M and then I'd dot the I's with daisies and I'd sit like, just a minute. Do you have an I in your name? Because I'll dot your I with a daisy too, Eventually I learned how to do it a lot faster. But that was sort of it. That's when I knew that Little House, that there was something else going on with it. It was a few years into when we would go places and people would start to cry when they saw me, that I thought, oh, this is really, it still happens. People still cry. I used to feel really bad about it, but now I feel like I am the source of some emotional venting, so I can take it. If it heals you, you'll bring the tears. I'm fine with that.
Well, that just brings up all kinds of questions, doesn't it? Now, first of all, Prince Charming, that's a fine autograph, but maybe Uncle Dean's would have been worth more.
Listen, had I known,
Just thinking.
and this was pre-eBay, I would have had all the uncles sign stuff. I'd be a wealthy woman today.
Every roast to just go to town.
Roast? No, my living room.
Yeah,
I
no,
just,
that's right.
hey
You
guys.
wouldn't even have to go anywhere. The other thing is, what I find interesting now, if I have this wrong, correct me, please.
Sure.
Which is that my memory of when I was a huge, my mom was a librarian, I was a huge reader.
You read the books, I'm sure.
Read all the books. Mm-hmm. So when we found out that the TV show was coming on, it was like everything just stopped.
Yeah.
Now, so my memory of it is that there was great want for this show because of the success of the books before it even took to the air. I guess.
I think there was clearly. I don't know the ins and outs of the procurement of the rights and stuff. Again, because I was little and I really haven't looked back that far into how that all happened. But I think people have been wanting the stories to be told for a while. There were books on tape done of them. Oddly enough, in the 70s they were done. And Sarah Jessica Parker and Cynthia Nixon played Laura and Mary. They changed. Different kind of family story now, isn't it? These things happen when you grow up. So what I do know is that, and I really figured a lot of this out while I was writing this book, because we were in the middle of the pandemic and lockdown, and Little House on the Prairie was having sort of this resurgence. But then at that same time, we were going through what we were going through that summer with the civil unrest and George Floyd and the political climate and all of that. We were in a real state of upheaval, and I realized that when we made Little House on the Prairie, when we started in 1973, and it aired in 74, we were coming out of the Vietnam War. The ERA was starting to become at the forefront of the minds of a lot of people. The civil rights movement was still at hand. A lot of the sort of free love and drugs ideals in the 60s were now creating lots of other problems. We were dealing with, a lot of people coming home from Vietnam, a lot of men coming home addicted to heroin and other drugs, and all that sort of fun disco stuff. Just kind of, it was going to start slowing down. And Michael Landon was telling those stories through the Little House lens. There was an episode called, I think it's called A Soldier Comes Home, A Soldier's Return, where Mrs. Whipple, the sewing lady's son, comes home from the Civil War addicted to morphine and overdoses and dies at the end. We did that on Little House on the Prairie, but because it wasn't done in a brash or exploitive manner, it was, I think, more impactful and more palatable and more realistic. We told stories of racism, of chauvinism, anti-Semitism. Oh, we covered all the isms. The complete and utter disregard for the Native American people. And Michael really shined a light on a lot of those issues. And even though, I look back at the relationship between Ma and Pa on the show, and you do see, Ma doing a lot of more coffee, Charles, and that's kind of all she does is bake a pie and serve coffee. But that's not entirely true, because the way he wrote their relationship, they were absolute partners in the raising of those kids, and they balanced each other really well. When he was being a hothead and angry, she was a very calm voice of reason, and when she was being a hothead and angry, he would laugh and she'd get angrier. And then she'd come around to see, okay, maybe I don't need to handle things this way. They built the first house together, alone, hand in hand. So, there were messages buried in all of that. And I think the reason that the show had this big resurgence during COVID is because we were in the same kind of place, in a real place of upheaval. We were also in a major recession then. If you remember the oil crisis, there were gas lines at gas stations. You guys are old enough to remember those. So I think not only is Little House a reminder of what we went through in the 1800s to get to where we are, if we could survive that, we can get through this. Also what we went through in the 1970s, 1980s, and continuing, if we can get through that, we can get through this. So I think that's probably why Little House endures. And then there are also just the fun episodes that are kind of about nothing. Like Halloween Dream, it's about nothing. The Werewolf of Walnut Grove is really about nothing.
I was watching the DVD set and reminiscing with some of my favorite episodes, but on one of the discs they have the screen test with you and Michael. And Mike, I mean, you would know this better than me, obviously, but that's lightning in a bottle.
I guess it's chemistry. It's the perfect chemistry.
But you don't for a moment think that's not going to work.
No, oh no, we were completely 100% comfortable. I immediately thought of him as a father figure. And now, mind you, before I auditioned for the show, I had no idea who he was. I didn't watch Bonanza. I watched Batman. And the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family, but I didn't know from Bonanza at all. And I couldn't understand why my family was in such an uproar over this thing. Even my grandfather came to my first audition, which is weird. He never did that kind of stuff. In fact, I have the pilot script with my dialogue highlighted in crayon. And on the front of it is clipped a little memo from my grandfather's desk at NBC, where he was working at the time, with the scene numbers that I was auditioning for in the screen test with the paperclip. He was totally invested, and I didn't get it. And then I met Mike, and it wasn't that he was Michael Landon or Little Joe or any of that. It was just he had this. I could see why people were so excited. He was a star. I walked in the room, you could feel that energy, and he was so warm, and he was funny, and so I immediately felt comfortable enough to consider him to be a second dad, almost immediately, and it shows in that screen test.
It really does.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's not only, but he's a very much a force behind the show.
Oh, 100%.
Too. So I mean that's a lot of pressure for anyone.
Yeah, my hat's off to him because he was writing, I think, every other episode in the beginning, every 3, every 4 later on. He directed every other, every 3, every 4. He produced it. He and I, this is the smart, a lot of what he did was smart, but one of the smart things he did was he and Kent McRae, who was his best friend and executive producer on the show, owned the company we rented all the equipment from.
Oh, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like way beyond the curve thinking.
So none of this is none of my business, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to.
It'd be funny if I said no, wouldn't it?
It would be,
Yeah.
it would be. But I paid $46 for this at Target. Do you get any money from that?
I would need a pie chart to kind of really show you what it is, but if this is the whole of Little House on the Prairie of every season, and then there were the 2 final seasons as a gift for staying on the show,
Yeah.
12% after everybody gets theirs is mine, of the final 2 seasons. So yes. And it sustains me very nicely, and that was, that might be a little too much, actually, because if it's just, it would be a 12th of 2 DVDs. So
It's
probably closer to like $1.75.
And then I really do want to get to the book, but when you look at this in a box and you just think, my God, you know, for all of us who saw the show in its first run on television, just had you told us then that someday you can have every episode in one little box and you can watch it with
gosh.
anyone, and in fact, you don't even need the box, you can just watch it on your TV while you're at the dentist. Okay, but that is
I like
amazing.
your dentist.
But but that must be very gratifying to just look at that and say, okay, I did that.
Oh, not just that, just the whole experience, and to be part of something that people really love. People, I mean, look, you're here because of that. It's such a gift, and it's not lost on me, not for a moment. You know, there was a brief period of time while we were still shooting the show when I was a teenager that I just didn't want to wear petticoats and pantaloons. I wanted to wear ditto jeans like my friends and feather my hair like they all had the Farrah Fawcett haircut, and I couldn't because it had to be put into braids. And I really wanted to go on dates, but I couldn't because I didn't go to work, and you know. And so that was the most rebellious and anti-Little House I got ever in my lifetime. Other than that, it's been a complete blessing. And I was an adult. I was a teenager. I was supposed to rebel. So I didn't really rebel against my parents so much as I did against the costume supervisors.
Well, but I'm sure you've given this much thought, which is the subject of stardom in childhood, which it does not treat everyone equally. And there are great horror stories of children who are in the business very young and how they ultimately turn out. Now, I don't know, you know, it's which comes first, the chicken or egg. I have no idea. But it seems to me that you have, like, a lot is on your parents, right?
Yes, and I know a lot about this, A, because I lived it, and B, because I produced a documentary for A&E, 2-part documentary with my friend Tony Dow, who just passed away. He was Wally on Leave It to Beaver. Tony and I produced a documentary together called Child Stars, Their Story. Their Stories. Oh, no, Their Story, I think. And we interviewed 40 or 50 former kid actors, everyone from my sister to Malcolm Jamal Warner to Jackie Cooper to Diana Sarah Carey, who was the very first child star before Shirley Temple, before Jackie Coogan even, in silent films. She was a character called Baby Peggy. I have this wonderful picture she signed of me, of her in costume, 2.5 years old with a cigarette. Which for me is a reminder of how messed up the business can be, and yet she's so cute. And she turned out to be, she was a tremendous woman and left the business and had a whole separate life. But what I found at the end of the day is that the kids that had the most problem had the least stable home life. It wasn't necessarily the business so much as it was the home and the parents. Because the second a child becomes successful and, God willing and God forbid, more successful than either one or both parents, the family dynamic changes, and it's really hard for people to deal with that and to relate to that. My favorite story, though, is Malcolm Jamal Warner, and we used this in the documentary, told us that his parents took him to the accountant every year where he had to do his own taxes. So he knew every penny that came in and every penny that went out. And they didn't hide anything from him. And he not only was learning that they were extremely trustworthy, because the money stuff is where it really gets bad, he also learned how to deal with and handle his own money, which so few of us are given an education into. You know, we turn around at 18 and you're handed this Coogan account and whatever other monies are left behind, and a lot of kids just kind of go wild and it's gone. I think the other thing that's really important too is that the parents of kid actors, if the kid really wants to do this for the rest of their lives, they have to really plan and prepare, because it's a business. I mean, a lot of it's luck, but it is a business, and there is a way to do it, and you got to put in the sweat to do it. You have to keep studying, you have to keep growing, you have to keep learning, you have to keep moving forward, even if you're a kid, because you have to change. You're not going to be cute and dimply and, you know, daddy, daddy, I have one cavity forever. That's creepy. That's, you know, whatever happened to baby Laura.
And your parents dealt with that, as you said, with you and your sister.
And my brother.
And your brother.
My brother played Willie on Little House.
That's right.
Yeah.
Give it up for Willie.
I'll tell him. I just talked to him last night. I'll tell him.
And your sister owns everything, right?
My sister owns the world.
Yeah.
My sister is she. This
By
is.
the way, I'm fine with that.
I'm totally cool with that. Listen, you know what this means? This means this year she's hosting all of us for Christmas in LA at her house, and we're all staying there. And this is a first, because it was always me, but now we live here,
Yep.
and a bunch of us are flying over there, and we're all going to stay at Sarah's, and it's going to be really fun. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how she handles this.
Yeah, that would be a show. So when you left, when you came out and you write in the book about you get married, you to Timothy Busfield.
Yep.
You all know that.
I'll tell him.
Man, he was we had him on the show for the Tom Hanks play.
Oh yeah.
Man, he's great.
Yeah, he's great. I
Yeah.
think so too.
Yeah,
Good choice. I know. I'll tell you what. First thing my mom said after she met him, she pulled me aside and she said, "Don't you F this up."
Yeah.
And I went, "Thanks, Mom." Don't plan to.
So, but it's third marriage.
Third.
And what for him?
Third.
Okay. So what was different, and is part of it leaving the other coast and coming here?
Well, we had 5 years in Michigan first, too.
Yes. And that was sort of where you learned a lot of the love of this, right?
Yes. Yes, and that's where I actually stopped all of the interventions and started allowing myself just to age. I call it aging gratefully. Thanks. Yeah, it's been quite a transition. When we were living in Los Angeles, it's sort of like when you work at the mall, if you live at the mall. Everything is entertainment industry oriented. Everyone has a screenplay. You walk into a restaurant, all the heads turn to see who walked in. Do I have to go say hello? You know, do I have to kiss the ring? Is this someone I like? Is it someone I don't like, but I'm going to smile anyway? Oh, look, she looks horrible. She gained weight. I mean, it's just, I just couldn't anymore. And so we escaped. And Tim was all about, he'd left years before. He lived in Sacramento, where he started his children's theater, which is now not just a children's theater, but a standing theater, an $82 million compound, the B Street Theater. And then after that, he moved back to Michigan, where he was born. And so when we re-met, because we'd met years before, when we re-met, he was in LA working briefly, but he was living in Michigan. And he said to me, I'm really crazy about you. That's the good news. The bad news is I live in Michigan. And I said, no, that's actually good news, because I want to get out of here. Please take me to there.
Was there a geographic detox that had to go on?
Well, considering I left Southern California and moved to Michigan during a polar vortex,
Yeah, that would seem like
I went from 72 and sunny to 17 below and 47 inches of snow standing in my yard. We had to cut a walkway, we'll cut a walkway to the garage to get the car. But you're gonna hate me because you guys all live up here. I loved it. I was so excited. I put on my snowsuit and I was running outside and throwing myself in snow drifts on the street.
Yeah.
My son and I were boiling water and throwing it in the air to watch it freeze. We did all the things, and I still do. I do it here now too. I'm so happy to live in a place that has a change of seasons.
So when you make the choice then to come to the Catskills and you find this place, what is it about the place that speaks to you, that becomes, that you say, this is worth investing part of my life?
Well, we knew we were moving to New York because we came here kind of on a bit of a lark, and I auditioned for a play, and I got the play, and so I did the play, and then I got another play, and then I got another play, and then Tim started directing episodes of TV in New York City, and so we knew we were coming to the city. During one of our drives from Michigan, we drove through the Delaware Water Gap and drove through Barryville, New York, which is in Sullivan County, which is near where we live. And we just fell in love with it. And we stayed for a couple days and we checked out the area and we said, you know, if we're going to live in the city, we should probably have an escape, because we'd come in Michigan, we had 35 acres and we were kind of in the middle of nowhere, but still close enough to the priorities for us: sushi and a movie theater. Sushi restaurant and a movie theater. The rest of it, I don't care. Anyway, it spoke to us, so we decided that Sullivan County was where we were going to look. And in that general area of Bethel, Glen Spey, Berryville, Callicoon, Coshecton, and we looked at a few places, and we actually made an offer on another place, and it just sort of fell through, nothing happened. And Tim was looking on Zillow, and he found that he saw this kind of cute but sad-looking hunting cabin kind of place, and he said, "Why don't we go look at that?" And that was what we saw. So when we first pulled up, I thought, "Oh, this is going to be great." And then as we got closer, I thought, "I can't do this." And then I actually said out loud, "Is that an outhouse?" And it was. It had plumbing and had a bathroom, but it didn't have heat. So in the beginning, after we finally decided, after we got rid of let me back up even more. When we walked inside, everything that the people before us owned was still there. They just left. I wrote in the book, it's like they got raptured up.
And they just sort of
there was toothpaste, there was soap in the shower, there was cereal in the cupboards.
A little creepy.
And it had been empty for like a decade. It was all wet and mildewed. When we cleaned it and emptied it and gutted it, and there was a big built-in, like one of those beds with shelves over the headboard, for books and all that kind of stuff, big wooden thing with a mattress in it, with this horrible leopard and zebra print curtains and stuff. So we pulled the mattress up, it was full of mice. Luckily, I am not afraid of mice. And my friend who was helping me at that time, Tim, was working, was like, "You got to kill him, you got to kill him." And I was like, no, we'll get rid of him. And I grabbed the closest thing I could find to start catching him. It was a crock pot. So can you imagine what the mice must have been thinking? I'm chasing mice all over the bedroom with a crock pot. And I'm such a dope. I take the mice and I take them outside. And then later on, someone says, they're just going to go right back in, right? They got in, they know where the entrance is. It's not, anyway, it was a challenge, to say the least.
Even more respect for you just to know that the first thing you would think of is, slow cooker.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was there. It looked like a bucket. It seemed logical at the time. You have to understand also I was in like a hazmat suit and gloves, and I had a breather mask on because of the mildew in the place, and so.
And it was important for you to do this.
It was important. It was important for me to do this because this was the first place we owned together.
Yeah.
And it was important that we nurture it and that we make it our own. And we had gotten rid of everything before, everything that he had and I had. Now we had things that were ours together that we furnished our New York apartment with, and this was going to be the same thing. It was going to be us together. And we were peeling wallpaper and doing as much as we could short of actual construction, which at that point was not within our pay grade. It became that later, but, and it did need, it did need stuff that there was no way we were gonna do. It needed plumbing, all new plumbing, insulation, a new roof, things that we couldn't do. Although we've done quite a bit. This summer, I worked with the crew that built the deck. I demolished and built a deck. In fact, Tim was doing the play, he was in rehearsals, and just before we finally closed it, I signed all of our names on the inside of the deck. And Tim came home and he said, my name's not there. And I said, did you build the deck?
There you go.
You were off playing with Tom Hanks. I built the deck.
Yeah.
And he said, but the dog's name is there. I said, yes, she was digging. She built the deck.
Help. What kind of dog?
She is a rescue mix. We had her DNA tested, and she is a German short-haired pointer, lab, and mostly, and then literally everything else. Dalmatian, Chihuahua,
Right.
Pit Bull, Catahoula. She's a great dog. Her name is Chicago, because guess where she's from? We got her in Chicago.
Yeah. And I would assume would love being in the country.
Oh my gosh! Oh, she's so happy. We
Well,
went
that's a
for
great life.
we went for a walk with her the other day, and she was just beside herself because there were puddles too. It was fun for her, not so much for us. It was fun for her.
When you realize this, there is a sense, and you get the sense in the book that there's this very conscious. We're definitely starting a new chapter.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a complete reset, but it's pretty much a reset.
It is a reset, and this is where we know we want to be. Like everywhere else felt temporary. New York felt permanent. Although we do have this fantasy of someday living in Ireland, but then we look around us and go, no, we'll stay here. We'll vacation there.
Yeah. Where would you live in Ireland? I think about this all the time.
Probably somewhere near Galway.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
But you drive around and you look at it and you think, my God, this is beautiful. And then you come home, and I live in about an hour north of here, right on the New York-Vermont border. Well,
it's gorgeous. Yeah.
It's like, oh,
It's a different
okay, why
beauty,
am I
but it's,
living?
yeah, exactly. It's so beautiful. And where we are, that was our weekend house, and we were mostly in the city. And that was just kind of going to be, and then COVID hit, and it changed. And after everything sort of calmed down, we still stayed up there. And now the place in the city is the place we visit. We go down for sushi, movies, and our annual doctor dentist tours. And it's a tour. As you get older, it becomes not just one appointment, then it becomes a follow-up, and then you got to go see the cardiologist, and then you have to get the colonoscopy, and then, I used to laugh at like my older relatives when they would talk about all the procedures they had done and the tests and stuff. Now that's all I talk about.
But you used a term, and I'm not going to get it right, and which is bad of me because you use it in the book too. But what did you say?
Aging gratefully.
But before of not anti-aging, but
I don't like anti-aging.
okay.
What?
And what's the opposite of that?
Oh,
You said when
embracing.
I decided to.
Age gratefully.
Okay, I thought there was something else. But how did that go? I don't know. Well, you know what? We're recording this. I'll listen back.
Let me know what I
I'll
said.
text you.
Thank you.
But the idea of saying, okay, I'm not gonna go through all this stuff.
Yeah,
Was
that really started in Michigan, but it became even more important to me here. And the one thing I'll say the politically correct thing is a female actor, which I learned when I was president of Screen Actors Guild. The argument being, you don't call a female doctor a doctoress, so why are we called actresses? We're female actors, we're actors. I found that there's a lot more opportunity for women 45 and older in theater than there is in film and television. And there's a lot more opportunity to play a lot more interesting roles in theater than there is in film and television. So that's where my focus really was too, and I really enjoyed allowing myself to age gratefully so that I could play those roles and do that. And boy, it's time saving too, I gotta tell you. I don't go get my hair colored anymore. Every once in a while I'll get a facial, but I see a dermatologist again once a year for the annual doctor tour. But that's it, and it just, I feel better in my own skin. I feel like I'm me and not someone else's idea of what I should be.
That must be exhausting.
It's exhausting maintaining being the idea of what other people think. I mean, and especially living in Los Angeles, I guess all the plastic surgeons went to the same school because all the women have the same noses, the same lips, and the same cheeks now, and the same boobs. How they swim, I don't understand. They just float, right? I also started wondering, because now you'll get some real insight into my brain. What happens when you die and you're buried and everything, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and 2 sacks of silicone? And maybe some lip implants? So that was just not going to be me.
This is why that book is so great, is because you paint a picture, Melissa Gilbert.
Thanks.
We'll get to some questions here in a second from the audience, but let me, in the working of the of now, because COVID had a big part of this, although it seems like you would have done it anyway.
I was definitely on my way. I think COVID really, Tim and I have been talking about, having a garden and having chickens, and just the other day we started having this conversation about other animals.
What other animals?
Sheep, okay. Maybe goats.
All right. We had a vote for goats.
Goats.
Yeah.
Goats are great. Sheep are kind of great. I'm a little bit obsessed with miniature Highland cows. I don't know if you guys have seen them, but they're this big, but they're the big shaggy ones with the horns. Really? And apparently you can get about a gallon of milk every couple of days out of them, which I thought was kind of great. So we'll see. I don't know. Every time I sort of talk about doing something like this, then someone gets a job in, like Malta for 3 months. So it wouldn't be us actually taking care of them. It was different during COVID because nobody was working, nobody went anywhere. We still have the chickens though. I went out and visited them today. They don't like rain. They hate, I think they think snow is lava. They will not come out, they won't go down the ramp until I clean it. I have to clean, yeah, I don't know, they're very prissy.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
But so then when COVID comes, you think, all right, and this is also when you realize, as you're being told, that this whole new audience is, we're all home, we don't know what we're going to do. So we turn on TV and we watch this show that started in the 1970s, and we're just mesmerized again.
Yeah, it's really, it's how the book came about was kind of interesting because, we knew we wanted to have this life, and then once, lockdown sort of kept going on and going and going and going, and then if you remember, we're worried about the food supply chain and the meat packing and right. People getting sick and not being able to get to work and not being able to drive and not being able to, So we started thinking, how are we going to, if we had to, how would we live off of this land that we own? How do we do that? How do we get as off-grid as possible if we need to? And that was the catalyst to sort of jumpstart us into this life that we have now. We're not entirely off-grid, but we're gearing up to, we've got to do an addition to the house. We need a second bathroom, and so we're going to probably open it all up and do that next year, and we're going to go solar. We don't want to rely on anybody else. So when we made this decision to do this, I started posting on Instagram about, the garden we were building and doing it was so beyond our capabilities. We ordered the table saw, and then of course I had to read the instructions, and we had to assemble the table saw, which I did.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but 10 years ago, did you ever think you would say the words, "When I ordered a table saw"? No, nor would I have said, "and I was the one who assembled it." Because Tim is like, "Instructions? What are instructions?" Or, then like the little packet that has all the little tools you need that comes with something, he loses those.
And then we're just left with, well, let's see if we can put it together. So I was in charge of all, we call it mustructions, because one of my kids used to use that word when they were little. We used a lot of the words our children did. So I was in charge of all the mustructions, and I was in charge of all the assembly. And then Tim did all the heavy lifting, really. And there we were. And so I was chronicling all of this on Instagram. And I got a phone call. My publicist, Amy, got a phone call from somebody at CBS this morning saying, we'd love to come up and do a story on Melissa and how she's gone back to the Prairie and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And I laughed and said, that's cute, back to the Prairie. I hadn't even thought of that. That's funny. And they did the story. And about a week later, my literary agent called and said, you know this is a book, right? And I said, what do you mean a book? And he said, this Back to the Prairie thing? And I went, oh. You mean kind of like, okay, so, and so I sat down and I just started, first I was going to write, I was going to write a proposal and just send it to we were going to send it to the people who had published my first memoir. And I was gearing up to do that, and my agent called them at Simon & Schuster, and they said, don't take her anywhere, we want it. We don't even want to see paper, we just want this book. So that was done. Now I had a deadline, so now I had to write it. And there it is. I mean, it just kind of, this one really more than the other one, it poured out of me in such a different way because I'm in such a different place. My first memoir was, it came from a place of a lot more bitterness. To me, it's interesting just because, I mean, I've done a lot of therapy, so I've done a lot of studying of me. I mean, who do you want to know better than you? It's really important to know you so you can know other people. But that person, that still bitter person who was living in a shell of, Botox and fillers and all of that stuff, and kind of in denial about so much and yet still so angry and embittered, is not the same person who wrote this book. The person who wrote this book is this sort of peaceful, contented, grateful, kind of more zen, yet feisty, calm person with, I have no axes to grind anymore. I'm done. This is the last third of my life. Now it's really too short to be carrying that stuff around. I had to let all that go.
How much of that do you think, this is probably impossible to answer, it is impossible to answer, but how much of that do you think is well, the work you did, of course, the therapy.
Yeah.
But also just aging.
It's just aging and growing up, and
understanding yourself better.
100%.
And I mean, I'm sorry.
That's my favorite ringtone ever.
By the way, did you think about ducks on the farm? Did you?
Actually, now that I'm thinking about, oddly, yeah. For some reason, I'm thinking ducks now.
Because having spent a fair amount of time in therapy myself, the anger is something that, like when you realize that it's sort of dissipated, it seems silly that it was there to begin with. Yeah.
Well, yes, it depends on what that is. I think that the biggest example is my relationship with my mother was very. We're very, very close. We always have been incredibly close, yeah. But it's a very contentious relationship and a lot of sort of dysfunction and darkness and bad stuff that we dealt with for a really long time. And it took some time for me to not talk to her for a while over the last few years. And then as I began to heal from all of that and dealing with all of these sort of family skeletons that came screaming out of the closet that she had been keeping from me, including the circumstances of my father's death, which I wasn't told the truth of and kind of stumbled into. We've now reached this place of gentleness, where she was just here, and we spent a bunch of time with her. I did, especially just laying on the bed in her hotel room and talking about all kinds of stuff, and it's really great because it feels incredibly healing. And I don't have an axe to grind, but I will say this, as far as ringtones go, her ringtone is still the Darth Vader theme from Star Wars. It is. When she calls, the phone goes dun, 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 dun. Sorry, it's my mom.
And this is honest to God truth, honest to God, and Paul can attest to this. My ringtone is the Darth Vader theme, but only when Alan calls. It's my boss.
Is he single? Because my mom's single.
I love your mother too much. but I hear he makes a good living. We have cards. Do people fill out cards, or are you going to do? Do you have cards? Do you have cards, or do you want to just shout stuff out?
You can shout.
All right. Well, let me do these 2 cards, and then we can do the shout-out game. That'll be fun. Do you love the violin music Michael Landon played?
Who asked that question? Can I see your hand? Who asked?
Who asked the question about the violin?
Because if it's a child that asked the question, the answer is different. Oh, you did?
Okay.
I love those.
Violin? Okay.
I love those tunes that the playback played. Michael was basically playing. There was no there. He didn't know. I will tell you this though, because we had a lot of music. We did a lot of singing on the show. You know, we sang a lot of hymns. And there was one day where we were shooting something in church and we were singing "Bringing in the Sheaves." And it was just a hot mess, except for me and Mike. And he cut and he said, "Can I ask you guys, why is it that the only 2 Jews in the room know the song?"
Jay wants to know, Melissa, what is your favorite hike in the Catskills?
Hi, I haven't taken a ton of hikes, but the closest one is just a walk around Koinonia, which is the lake kind of across the street from our house. Now you kind of know where I live. Let me tell you something. We had some visitors from Pennsylvania one morning at 7 a.m. who showed up to take a picture and said, "We read your book. We know you're up early with the chickens." So we thought, I hadn't even brushed my. Tim was in his underwear, and we were both like, "I don't want to make them feel bad, but I haven't brushed my teeth yet." So Tim said, "She won't take any pictures. Please don't take pictures of my wife, but she'll sign anything you want, and to have a seat, we'll have some coffee, and you guys can chat." And then that was it. Well, they drove all that way. I felt bad. And then I could sort of hear like all the security people in my head going, "What are you doing? Are you insane?" But
I was going to say, even though you're back to the Prairie, call the security company.
I have a crossbow.
You have a crossbow?
I have a crossbow. It's a pink camo crossbow. Tim gave it to me for Christmas, our first Christmas here, and then I learned how to shoot it.
Gift, isn't it?
I know how to shoot it. We actually had conversations during COVID about shooting turkeys with the crossbow and how to dress a turkey in the field and where the best part is the breast meat. That's really all you can get from them. And
Wild turkeys.
we were ready.
Yeah, well, good.
Not that I could hit a turkey, but I could hit a person in case you're thinking of coming to my house for coffee.
And if you're from the Keystone State, just stay the hell off.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Or maybe after 10 a.m.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Do people recognize you now, like out and about at the
Do people recognize me?
in Malta when you're at
In Malta is funny. Malta was like a crazy example of where we could go on location. Actually, it's not.
Malta, New York. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. People do, not so much like in New York City or Chicago or LA, but outside in smaller cities and areas, yes. And then if I talk, that's it.
Yeah.
I tell you, the other night, I don't know, it's so dumb. I can't believe I'm telling the story. Whatever. I hurt my back a couple of days ago. And if you know my history and if you've read my books, you know that I have spine issues. And the fact that I've injured myself again is kind of like not great. And I tried doing all the interventions I could to try and make myself feel better. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to sleep. And I finally threw up my hands and I said, "Honey, we got to go to the ER. I need steroids. I need muscle relaxers. I need pain meds. And I need images because I think I've done something. And it's down low where I'd broken my back before." The point of the story is, and by the way, I'm feeling a little better today. I'm going to be fine. Anyway, when we waited in the waiting area of the ER and we signed in and everything, and I came in and we had masks on because you have to wear masks in hospitals. We had masks on, and as we were going into the triage area where the nurse does your blood pressure and stuff, she said, "Melissa Gilbert, huh? Oh, and your eyes are like the girl on Little House on the Prairie. That is so funny." Still, and so then I took down my mask and she was typing and she turned around, she looked at me and she went, "Oh, well, that's why you look like her."
Crack that code. Well, yes.
I just want to thank you. I grew up watching you. I did, of course, cry when you walked out.
Oh, bless your heart.
And I want you to know that your show to this day brings so much comfort to me and probably to most of us watching it.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Any piece of advice that Michael Landon gave you all those years ago when you worked with him that still resonate today?
There's so much. There was so much. Yeah, well, one time we were at a big NBC function, and everyone was dressed in black tie and all the executives were there and we were doing the meet and greet and the yada yada and the handshaking and all of that, and he pulled me aside. He said, "None of this matters, right? What's important is what you do when you go home." So there's that. Another lesson and piece of advice, our families were very, very close. Personally, we vacationed together, spring break in Hawaii every year. We slept over at their house, their kids slept over at our house. Michael Landon Jr. was my prom date. We all went to the same school together. We still talk, we still communicate on the regular. But one year we were on vacation and we were teenagers. We were probably 17, 18. And Leslie, who's one of my best friends since then, Leslie and I decided to drink alcohol for the first time. And with our friend Tracy Wald, whose mom was Helen Reddy. And she'd had alcohol before, so we let her be the leader. So we went into Leslie's room. Now, when we traveled, my mom would empty our mini bars and put cereal and milk, and because she didn't want us ordering room service because a bowl of cereal is like $12. It's stupid. And cold cuts and bread and stuff. But Leslie's minibar was full. So Tracy said, "Well, let's see what you like." So first we tried Bailey's, and then we tried vodka, and then we tried scotch, and then we tried champagne, and then we tried wine, and oh my God, were we sick as dogs. And the next morning, but still managing to run through the hotel and make a really loud, horrible scene and spectacle of ourselves. We didn't get in trouble, we didn't get caught, we thought. And the next day we gathered, the two of us, on the beach, and we were just in agony. And we were laying on our chaises on the beach with wet towels over our head, because we thought we were gonna die. And we hear, and we lift up our towels, and there's Mike, and he has a tray, like this, with 2 glasses. And he said, "I hear you girls had some fun last night." We're like, "Yeah?" And he said, "Drink these." They were Bloody Marys. "Drink these. It'll make you feel better. If you learn one thing from me, don't mix alcohol. Are you crazy? Not don't drink, just don't mix alcohol."
Oh, that's a friend.
That's when I realized maybe not so much of a father figure, more of a friend.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Good advice, though.
But by the way, how many people, just by a show of hands, how many people, as a result of the show, were called by their parents half pint?
Oh, there's one.
Yeah, I went one here too. Oh, another one here. Yeah.
There's a couple half pints. I love that.
Oh,
That's so cool.
That is really, really cool.
That was my nickname on the set. That's what they called me. That's what everyone on the show.
Which came first, though?
What do you mean? Oh, no, it was because of, when we were shooting the pilot, Michael came over to Melissa Sue Anderson and I, and he said, "So you're both Melissa. This could be a problem." And he pointed to her, he said, "Do you have a nickname?" She said, "Yes, Missy." He said, "Okay, good." He said, "Do you have a nickname?" And I said, "No, but how about Moisha?" And he looked at me and he went, "Moisha?" And I said, Yeah, let's go with Moisha." And he said, "But that's an old, that's an old Jewish man's name," is what he said. He said, where did you, I said, "I don't know, I heard it somewhere and I thought it was kind of cool." He said, "No, you know what, we're just gonna call you Half Pint, because that's what Laura's pa called her." And that's what they called me. But very few people on the show, then it just became like this weird version of half pint. Victor French called me halfing pinters. A lot of the cast and crew called me halfy, half a pint, half a gallon, half a quart. When they were threatening to switch us over to the metric system, they were calling me half liter. The only person who didn't call me half pint on that set was Dean Butler. Probably because the age difference between us was so enormous and we were playing husband and wife, he didn't want to underline it by calling me by my baby name, which is weird. And it probably made a lot of sense at the time.
I'll promise I'll get back to questions, but Victor French, was he great?
Mm-hmm. He was the best.
It's just, I loved him, and I thought he was an underrated actor.
Yeah.
Because he was so brilliant on your show and others.
Do you know what else he was brilliant in? And he's only in one scene. He played Deborah Winger's dad in Officer and a Gentleman.
Officer and a Gentleman, that's right.
And he didn't, I think he had 2 lines of dialogue, and he just sat at the table scowling at Richard Gere the whole, and it was just amazing, all the stuff he had going on.
But a vulnerability, and,
Yep.
and it was just a lovely.
He was funny.
Yeah.
He was he made us laugh. He made me laugh a lot. He made me laugh a couple times till I actually peed laughing, which vexed the costumers. But we used to do a game with Victor, all of us kids. He would sit in a chair like this, and we would line up, and when it was your turn, you had to walk to the front of the line, and you could stay there until he made you laugh, then you had to go to the back of the line. And it was just, I'd get to the front of the line, and I'd just go straight to the back of the line. Because I'd be laughing halfway down, and I'd just throw my hands up and go. We had fun with Victor.
Anybody remember the show Carter Country? Yeah, he started, it was the sheriff in Carter Country.
We used to do another thing, too, where I would say, I got all the blood in my body is in my feet. And so he would grab me by the ankles and turn me upside down and hold me like that. And that became our thing. Or he'd come over to me and say, do you have foot blood? Yeah.
Yes, and red.
How long did it take you to memorize your lines when you were like 9 and 10?
Not long. Takes me a lot longer now. I can remember those lines more than I can remember the lines from something I shot yesterday. Boy, the brain is a fun little piece of equipment, isn't it? I guess, I mean, I haven't diagnosed it, but I can tell you that historically, if I go up on a line, an image pops up in my head, and I can see the shape of it, because I highlight all my dialogue. So I can see the shape of the other person's line in my mind's eye and mine, and I know which one it is, and then I get it. So maybe that's a photographic memory? I don't know. But as a kid, it was actually pretty easy. And also, there's only one time that I didn't know my lines, only once, and it never happened again. That's another Michael Landon story.
Now you have to.
I don't have to tell it. I see you, and I'm going to answer your question.
We'll get to you next. I promise.
We were doing a scene in the episode where we're selling, I think we're selling medicine to buy a Bible. And we were doing a scene, it was Melissa, Sue, and Mike and myself, and I didn't know my lines. And I kept messing up and messing up and messing up. And Mike was directing. And he said, cut. He said, half pint, do you not know your lines? And I started crying. I'm so sorry. He went, okay, everybody leave. Everybody go take 20 minutes. You guys go get a snack, go have a cigarette, whatever you want to do. Sit down. So he sat down. He said, someone bring me the pages. He sat down and he ran lines with me a bunch of times. And he said, do you know him now? And I said, yes, I do. I said, thank you so much. And I started to cry again. He said, it's all right. Don't cry. Everything's going to be okay. And then he leaned down and he looked at me like almost nose to nose and said, that's not happening ever again, is it? And I said, I don't know. And he went, no, don't cry. Just promise it's never happening again. And I said, it won't. It won't happen. And it never did.
And then he gave you another Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
Yes, all the way in the back.
I actually worked at the skating rink where some of your cast members came one time.
The skating rink in Northern California?
Yeah,
In Sonora?
in Northridge.
Oh, in Northridge. Oh my gosh.
My question is, as an adult, have you gone back and read the Little House books with the different, and has that changed your perspective on Laura or anything like that?
I did, actually, because in 2010, we did a musical version of Little House on the Prairie that toured, and I played Ma. And a couple years before that, when it was in development, they'd asked me to do it. And at that point, it was me as Ma and Patrick Swayze as Pa, which was doubly interesting because they both died of the same cancer. But because I had to come at the stories from a completely different perspective, I read them again with Ma's eyes, reading as much as I could about her. So I did get the chance to do that. And I've read every book since. I've read Caroline, I've read Wilder Rose, I've read Coda, I've read, who's it, Coda? No, maybe, yeah, there's a graphic novel. I've read Pioneer Girl. So I'm well versed in the history of that family.
I listened to them in the car with Sarah Jessica Parker. Oh my God, they're good. It was Sarah Jessica Parker.
Sarah and Cynthia Nixon.
And Cynthia Nixon. Oh, that's good. Have they redone them since?
Little Sex on the Prairie?
Yeah. Have they redone them since? They had to have redone them since.
The books on tape?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
That's priceless. That's great. Well, we can get Kim Cattrall a job. All right, now.
I don't think she needs one. She's on another series.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Two comments, one question. I was going to say, my daughter loves you. Her name's Olivia because I still watch your show today, and she loves when you make me cry. I would say everybody in this audience is probably jealous when I would drive to California and back to coffee with you at your cabin. And my question is, did you ever get to hit Nellie in real life?
She and I are actually really good friends. We've just been through a major texting back and forth. She got COVID, and I'd already had it. She's fine. She had no symptoms. She's fine. She's okay, but we were texting back and forth. I never hit her. I intentionally missed. I'm a good stunt person. But I did in the big mud wrestling over Almanzo, over the cinnamon chicken. First of all, that was not mud. That was a cattle watering hole. So most of that mud was cow poop. And they filled it with water to make it extra goopy. Oh yeah, they were hosing it. They held us off with this big, like one of those big hose trucks, like the big water tank with the giant fireman hose. And then the medic had to clean out our ears, and it was bad.
Hollywood magic.
Oh boy. Well, at one point, and you could see it on film, she's on her stomach and I'm on top of her, like pulling her hair and stuff. And I went around like this to grab her around the neck, and I had a handful of this mud and I missed and I jammed it in her mouth. I apologized.
Man, that almost gets you ready for a mattress full of mice.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. It made, you know, she actually, this is how close we are. I had my first colonoscopy while I was still living in LA, and she took me to have my colonoscopy. And as she was wheeling me out, she said, you know, I could take this to a hill. There was a young man who had his hand up. Yes?
Yes. Oh, yes. Hi, how are you?
What was your favorite Little House episode to be in?
My favorite Little House episode is called The Lord is My Shepherd. It's a 2-part episode in the first season where our baby brother dies and Laura goes to the mountain to ask God to take her and give Pa back his son. Can't watch it. I can't watch it, not since my past. I can't watch it, because that episode, you see our whole relationship is right there. That scene on the mountain where I couldn't, I was crying so hard I couldn't talk.
How old are you?
11?
Do you watch the show?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that episode?
Yeah.
Oh, do you like it?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come up here.
I like the one with the boy.
Come up here.
Are you going to give it to him? Good for you.
And I'm sorry, what did you say your name is?
Grace
And the stairs are really, oh, you can actually, oh, your legs actually work. Good for you.
Grayson, I'm guessing you didn't hurt your back a couple days ago. Sharpie?
I have one.
You have a Sharpie?
Yeah, here. This is season 1. This is included in that. Okay. All right. And then she'll autograph that for you.
Grayson, is it Grayson? Yeah. I'm gonna have to do it on the inside because these are slick.
Yeah.
So
I'm
I'll
gonna
do it
take
on the
that out of that
DVD.
'cause I gotta buy another season 1. Okay.
Town Prairie Country Party.
What's your other favorite TV shows? What else do you watch?
100 Mile Walk.
You ever watched Emergency?
I was on that show.
I know.
The Lord is my shepherd.
Are you drawing a daisy?
I will. That's it, right? The Lord is my shepherd.
There you go. Look at that.
To
Um,
Grayson.
well, I hope you get. Oh, you know what? Paul, will you come up and can you take a picture of Grayson and Melissa? Please get them together, and then you can tell your friends. Yeah, hold on, because I'm going to do that, and I'm going to tell my friends.
I'm gonna make sure that dried.
I'm sorry. You can turn right.
You know what? Just sit right down here. Take over the whole goddamn show. All right.
I'm not a good director. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I drew a daisy, but not over an eye. And so I signed it in the middle here just in case that gets smudgy.
Yeah. All right.
Come
There
right
you
here.
go.
Look right here. Right here.
All right. Gilbert Grayson. Grayson, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Oh my God. I'm not giving any other stuff away. All right. Who wants the last question? Last question. Who has a great last question? Like a great finale question?
Joe, I think
All right. Go ahead. All
we're
right.
gonna have to do it. I'll do an encore.
What?
I'm gonna have to do an encore because
Oh, that's
this
fine. We can
lady
do two.
here.
Yeah, sure.
So let's do 1, 2.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wait, you're half pint. Okay.
How do you want younger generations to kind of watch the show and enjoy the show now that the world has changed like so much, it's gone through so much? Like how do you feel like it can resonate with younger generations still throughout so many years?
I think there are a lot of like I said before, there are a lot of episodes that are very timely, but there are ones you can pick. Like if you really want to watch something that is reflective of what we're experiencing now, watch The Wisdom of Solomon with Todd Bridges. That was the one that people were on social media talking about a lot during that summer of 2020. And that was written by Michael Landon, and he was an incredibly socially conscious person. So I would suggest that you watch it through the lens of what you're experiencing and see how it applies for you. I don't know how to tell you how to do that, but you can find those episodes. Circus Man, was it? No, not Circus Man. What was the one with when Mr. Olson's sister comes? I can't remember the name of the episode. Annabelle, that's the name of the episode. Thank you. Child of Pain, give you a little insight into alcoholism. The soldier comes home, I think is that one. So look, you'll see, and see. It'd be interesting if we meet again to see what you get from it. I think, like I said before, all those shows and stories are a reminder of who we were and how far we really have come. I know it feels like we're slipping back a lot, but it's baby tiny little millimeters of steps in the right direction. But if we can go through that, we can get through this. Plague and quarantine were the two that really resonated in 2020. Really, really.
And which way? Right
This
here, right?
woman.
Yes.
I was just curious, you mentioned
Altogether, we have 7. I have 4 boys, and Tim has 2 boys and a girl. But even better, we have 8 grandchildren now. Yeah. One of them turned 8 yesterday. This is my granddaughter, my first, Lulabelle, who this past summer I went to LA and stayed with my mom, and Lulabelle came and stayed overnight with me one night. And she had gone with me to a Little House cast reunion thing and hadn't really been around those guys. I see you in your Little House costume right there. You're coming here in a second. I don't know. She'll be here in a minute. Let me.
Okay, all right.
So, hold on. Lulu met them, and the morning after she slept over, she woke up in my mom's with me, and she said, "Granny Mel, can I watch Little House on the Prairie?" And she hadn't watched it yet. And I said, "Sure, of course. So I didn't start with the pilot. I wanted to start with something. I started with Country Girls, season 1, classic, Nellie and Laura. She loved it. And when it was over, she said, "Another?" And it was over, she said, "Another?" And then she said, "Granny Mel, would you put my hair in braids?" So I held myself together, and I'm braiding the kids' hair, and we're watching Little House on the Prairie, and my mom comes around the corner and goes, no. Let me get my phone. And she goes back in the bedroom, comes back, and she's crying and taking a picture of us. And Lulu said, she goes back into the bedroom, and Lulu says, "Is Yaya okay?" And I said, "Yes, it's just very emotional for her." She said, "Oh, all right." I think she thinks Yaya's a little bananas.